Social media. Amidst this global pandemic that we're going through, personal interaction has obviously dropped and communication with one another has been restricted to virtual interaction with each other, whether it be social media or something else meant to replicate in-person interaction, such as Zoom or FaceTime. However, what we start to see is the gradual loneliness that begins to envelop and surround us, and that the constant usage of social media is not able to replicate real life as it's supposed to, and it makes its users experience isolation and social anxiety. The dopamine released with social media creates an addiction towards it, and going too long without social media interaction only creates negative responses. Now, we have to ask ourselves, should we continue using social media as a distraction from reality, despite the unrealistic standards it represents for society and the inevitable damage that extended usage of social media creates? And more than this, what can we do in order to prevent this constant cycle of push and pull that we utilize while using social media? Despite social media's face value intention of being an external form of communication in which people may communicate with each other no matter where they are, it has evolved into something so much more. Social media's intent of being a distraction from reality causes users to leave the real world and be sucked into this virtual false sense of reality. This false reality comes as a result of platforms programming their applications to suck their audience in, especially now when we have no choice but to be left alone or stuck inside our houses or residence, that our primary form of communication with others that don't live with us is to use social media. This dependency upon social media only furthers the addiction that they had already planned for us to create on our own, and this newfound dependency just becomes a catalyst for that. Social media's access to everything grants us opportunity to discover and interact, and our constant desire to learn only furthers a dependency in which we rely on social media. This dependency can be seen in our fascination with instantaneous access. We expect things to be just a click away, and we expect to have quick and easy access to everything from video games to texting one another. The issue with this being that we become so accustomed to these bad habits of relying on social media to do these things for us that we stop interacting with each other while in person. This social anxiety that is produced stems from our addiction to social media and the lack of dopamine levels being output when with each other. Social technologist Sue Carmen Anderson elaborates on how social media gives us almost instant gratification of our desire to seek. Her research on which social media is linked to high points in dopamine levels reveals to us that because of the instantaneous gratification that comes out of having so much access to so much information, social media furthers our addiction in that humans want to learn and humans want access to everything and all of that. Dopamine levels even increase in doing things as little as checking email, and the productivity that we think we are engaging in by clearing out notification grants that gratification. More now than ever, given the global pandemic, because we are all restricted to our homes, we find ourselves having no choice but to find distractions from the problems of the real world. And our usage of social media grants us exactly that. People want to know what others are doing, and social media gives people the ability to know all of that and everything. But the problem with this is that people only show what they want you to see, and they prefer to show the good rather than the bad. This sets unrealistic standards for people that are constantly on social media because they are given a fake world presented by the people they follow. While many would think that our connection to everyone through social media should leave us without feeling lonely, it actually does quite the opposite. With the constant rise in dopamine occurring in our brains whenever we are on social media, what exactly causes it to trigger addiction? And what is wrong with having too much dopamine usage? The problem with this is that because our brain naturally craves dopamine, and social media causing a chemical imbalance triggers the addiction and that craving. Social media makes communication so easy and accessible, and our access to information being as easy and accessible as it is a way that we're still able to find ways to feel lonely when we're constantly surrounded by information. And how is it that that's even able to happen? Well, researchers have discovered that there's a direct correlation between longer social media usage and loneliness and anxiety. Here, let's take a look at the math. When we examine the data shown in Table 2, it is evident all of our coefficients are positive. This tells us that the mean data is increasing along with the average amount of people addicted as well. If the average is increasing, then there are more people addicted. You can also predict, if you were to introduce more variables, that the mean will increase based off the data, as we see in the visuals and diagrams. And for those that don't get the math behind it, basically an increase in social media use leads to an increase in loneliness, an increase in social anxiety, as well as a decrease in happiness. Looking and analyzing the data shows us the mathematical reasoning and correlation to social media and loneliness, and how these interactions are almost counterintuitive. The more time you spend on social media, the less time you get to spend with someone in person, and as a result, the lack of personal interaction keeps you from that happiness. The correlation between social media and loneliness only increases when factors such as followers and likes are introduced, because of their influence on one's self-esteem. This false sense of reality in which users are comparing themselves to is detrimental to their mental health. The lack of what was previously stated results in a decrease in happiness, an increase in loneliness, and a plethora of mental health issues. The research proves the counterintuitive aspect of social media and that the extended use of it rapidly deteriorates your mental health, while triggering an addiction that makes you thirst for more social media usage, furthering the cycle and locking you in. Actually interacting with one another, taking a break from social media, and communicating in person is crucial to our mental health. Taking a break from social media will remove bad habits and increase productivity. If not all social media is able to be deleted, then delete image-based platforms such as Instagram or Snapchat, as there's a greater deal of intimacy that has caused an increase of isolation in relation to its text-based counterparts as a result of it being a photo-based platform. University of Oregon professors Matthew Pittman and Brandon Reich have observed that the simulation that photo-based platforms give is much more stronger than those of text-based platforms and can cause more distress on one's mental health. While being able to communicate through photos may provide more intimacy, people are less likely to feel lonely if they aren't replied to on Twitter than on Snapchat, because of that exact intimacy involved. That jealousy involved is horrible for your mental health, and sticking to more text-based platforms will increase productivity and overall mental health. Another way that we have a chance of breaking the cycle in which social media usage and social anxiety controls us is when this global pandemic ends. The lack of personal interaction has everyone wanting to see others or meet up with others now, and this increase in face-to-face interaction has a chance to reset how we communicate with one another, and hopefully allow us to finally prefer in-person interaction over virtual interaction. The global pandemic has given us the opportunity to appreciate everything we once had taken for granted, and hopefully heal us and pull us out of this hole that we've dug ourselves in. And so we can see that because of this intentional addiction that social media platforms trigger, it forces users into creating this false sense of reality because it's a distraction from the real world. And within this false sense of reality, they have to constantly deal with unrealistic standards and loneliness. The addiction that these platforms promote affects our brain's dopamine levels and causes that chemical addiction, creating a constant cycle of longer social media usage. To break this cycle, users should either switch from photo-based social media platforms to text-based social media platforms, or take a break from social media as a whole. The change to make ourselves better as a whole relies on us to break free from the reins of social media dependency and limit our social media use to prevent addiction and social anxiety. Thank you.